It's a regular day in a quiet village in medieval England. Villagers are going about their daily work, herding sheep, baking bread, maybe gossiping by the well, when two children appear out of nowhere at the edge of town. But there's something very strange about them. They're green, and not just a little green either. These kids look like they've bathed in a pot of green paint. Who are they, and how did they get here? This is the strange story of the Green Children of Woolpit, a mystery that's puzzled people for hundreds of years. All right, let's rewind back to the 12th century in England. The exact year was somewhere around the 1100s. This was a time of knights in armor, castles, and village life without much technology, which meant people were pretty much in the dark about anything mysterious or unexplained. The village of Woolpit, where our story takes place, was a small farming community in Suffolk, which is in eastern England. People here lived simple lives, growing crops and raising animals, and the biggest excitement in town was probably watching the sheep graze. The name Woolpit actually comes from wolf pit. Why? Because the villagers dug deep pits to catch wolves, which were common back then and a danger to livestock. So the place already had an eerie vibe. It was a village known for trapping wolves, and maybe it was a bit spooky to begin with. One day, out of nowhere, two young children, a boy and a girl, showed up near one of these wolf pits on the edge of Woolpit. The villagers were shocked, not just because the children were strangers, but because of their odd appearance. Their skin was green, and no one in the village had ever seen anything like it. These weren't just any lost kids. They looked like they'd stepped right out of a fairy tale or a dream. The villagers, understandably freaked out, decided to bring the children to a man named Sir Richard de Calne. He was a local knight and a respected member of the community, probably the guy people turned to when something weird happened. Maybe they thought he could figure out what to do with these mysterious green-skinned kids. And that's where the story really starts to get interesting. So, what did the villagers find when they tried to take care of these children? Well, they quickly realized these weren't your usual kids. First off, they didn't speak English or even Latin, which was the other language many people knew back then. Instead, they spoke in an entirely unknown language that no one in the village understood. Imagine hearing someone speak in what sounds like complete gibberish and not even being able to guess where they're from. When the villagers offered them food, the kids refused everything. They wouldn't touch bread, meat, or any other regular food. For days, they barely ate anything, and the villagers began to worry. Then, by chance, they offered the kids some raw beans. Suddenly, the children's eyes lit up, and they gobbled the beans down like they hadn't eaten in weeks. The villagers were relieved to find something the children would eat, but the whole thing just kept getting stranger. Eventually, the kids did start eating other foods, and after a while, something very curious happened. The green tint on their skin started to fade. After months of eating a more balanced diet, they began to look more like regular kids. But what about their story? Where did they come from, and why were they green in the first place? As time passed, the children learned enough English to communicate. They shared a story that left the villagers with more questions than answers. According to them, they came from a place they called St. Martin's Land. They described it as a strange place that was always in twilight, a kind of greenish, dim light that never became bright daylight. The children said that the people of their land were all green, just like they were when they first arrived in Woolpit. They also mentioned that they had been tending to their father's cattle one day when they heard a loud noise, like bells ringing. And then, suddenly, they found themselves in Woolpit. It sounded like a dream or a fairy tale, but the children stuck by their story. And here's another mystery. The boy, unfortunately, became ill and passed away not long after they arrived in Woolpit. But the girl survived, grew up, and eventually adapted to life in England. She even got baptized, learned English, and later married a man from a nearby village. But she never changed her story. For her entire life, she insisted that she and her brother came from St. Martin's Land, a place unlike anything anyone in Woolpit had ever heard of. So, what could explain this bizarre story? Over the years, many people have tried to come up with explanations, but no one has solved the mystery. Here are a few popular theories. Theory number 1. Some historians think the children might have suffered from chlorosis, a medical condition that can give skin a greenish tint. Chlorosis is caused by a lack of iron in the blood, which could turn the skin pale and even a little green. Once they started eating a better diet, the condition could have disappeared, which might explain why their skin eventually lost the green color. Theory number 2. Another idea is that the children were actually Flemish refugees. During this period, there was a lot of political trouble, and some Flemish people fled to England for safety. They might have come from a nearby town, gotten separated from their family, and ended up in Woolpit by accident. If they were Flemish, that would explain the strange language no one understood. But it still doesn't explain why they said they came from a twilight world, or why they insisted everyone in their land was green. Theory number 3. And then, for all you fans of science fiction, there's the idea that they were aliens. Yes, you heard that right. Some people think the children might have been from another world or even a different dimension. They could have accidentally passed through a portal or a wormhole and ended up in medieval England. It would explain their strange language, unusual appearance, and mysterious description of St. Martin's Land. But of course, there's no way to prove this theory, so it remains just a fun, spooky possibility. No one knows for sure what happened to the Green Children of Woolpit, and maybe that's what makes this story so fascinating. It reminds us that there's a lot about the past and the universe that we still don't understand. Were they sick kids from a nearby town, lost refugees, or visitors from another world? We may never know. But one thing's for sure, this story keeps us curious, and it's a perfect example of how history can be filled with mysteries that are stranger than fiction. So, what do you think? Do you believe the children's story about St. Martin's Land? Or do you think there's a more down-to-earth explanation? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you love a good mystery, because there are plenty more where this one came from.